Hi there, esteemed audience, and welcome to another episode of Middle Grade Ninja. I'm Rob Kent. As you know, I'm the author of Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees, and Banneker Bones and the Alligator People, my two favorite books. These are the stories of a biracial 11-year-old boy genius detective. He's an inventor of robots. He's got a jetpack. He wears a trench coat. The inner pockets of that trench coat are lined with all kinds of gadgets. He's got a grappling hook. He's got smoke bombs. He's got blowtorch. He's got evidence baggies. Basically, whatever's in Batman's utility belt, he's got there in the trench coat. And together they solve mysteries and fight monsters such as giant robot bees and alligator people. I am currently working on an untitled third Banneker Bones adventure, and I can't get enough of this. If you're curious about Banneker Bones, you can get the first book, Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees, as a paperback and audiobook narrated by the exquisite David Radke. And the ebook is free to download whenever you're watching or listening to this, wherever fine ebooks are sold. So if you're curious, go ahead, download a free copy of the ebook of Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees. Once you're hooked, come back and see me for Banneker Bones and the Alligator People and bring money. If you like the show, if you like the books, if you're wondering what could I do for this Rob Kent fellow who's done so much for me free of charge, providing this wonderful show week after week, if you have a library card and you're listening to a show about reading and writing, so I assume you have a library card, the next time you're at the library, request for your librarian order a copy of Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees if they don't have one already. That way you can read the paperback for free and maybe somebody else can as well. So that's Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees. Download your free copy. Under the super secret pen name Robert Kent, I've written some horror novels, such as the young adult horror novel, All Together Now a Zombie Story, and All Right Now a short zombie story. And then the very adult series, The Book of David. The Book of David is a 5-volume horror novel in the style of Stephen King, very adult. So if that appeals to you, if you're curious, you can get the first chapter, chapter 1 of the Book of David. You can download that as an ebook for free whenever you're watching or listening to this, wherever fine ebooks are sold. So check out the Book of David by Robert Kent, not Rob. Coming up here on the Middle Grade Ninja podcast YouTube show thing, we are going to have literary agent Molly O'Neill here on June 11th. That's Tuesday. And then next week, we're also going to have New York Times bestselling author Amber Smith, and she will be here on Friday, which is the 14th. So make sure you tune in next week. If you say, Rob, I can't wait that long, I got to have more interviews now. Don't you worry. You head to middlegradeninja.com. You've got to read some of them, but by God, we've got interviews with hundreds of literary agents, publishing professionals, and all my favorite authors, not to mention guest posts by some wonderful authors. So if you're looking for writing information and you're here, check out middlegradeninja.com. Today, I am very excited. We're going to be chatting with author Dustin Brown, and we're going to have a wonderful conversation. Dustin, how are you this evening?
Hey, great, Rob. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for making the time for us. And if you would, why don't we start? I always say I'm terrible about summarizing other people's books and other people's biographies. So if you'd start us off just by letting a esteemed audience know a little bit about you and your background.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to share. So I grew up reading. I loved reading. They say that your favorite books in the world are the ones you read when you were 10 years old. And I don't know about me, but I don't know about you, but when I was 10 years old, I loved books that were funny. They had lots of adventure. And I remember those made me want to be a writer. So I always wanted to write books like that when I grew up. So I got older, I went to school for journalism, and I got some journalism jobs out of school. I worked at a local newspaper for a little while. I was an editor at a magazine for high school athletes, but I never wrote that book that I wanted to write. So about 8 years after I graduated, I started a side business working on Amazon, selling on Amazon. My wife and I kind of did it on the side, and pretty soon we were doing so well with that. I was making more than I was at my job, so I quit my job to do that full time. So I was doing that for a couple years, and I was always on Amazon. I was always researching projects, and I saw, I would come across books and going through those books, and I would see, a lot of self-published books, and looking through them, I'd start, read some of them. I'm like, man, I can do that. Like, I want to do that. And so I knew Amazon really well, and I still had that itch to write. So I just one day I was like, all right, I'm going to write my favorite book for when I was 10 years old. So I sat down and thought about things I liked when I was 10 years old. Video games were at the top of that list. So I wrote a book. I called it Trapped in a Video Game. And you can probably imagine what it was about. And my brother is an illustrator, actually. And so that works out really well for me. So he did the cover and some interior illustrations. And then we put up on Amazon. I ran some Amazon ads, and first couple days, nothing, and go by in a week and 2 weeks. And, I would get some reviews from friends and family and things like that. And pretty soon the sales started trickling in, started coming in. And after about a month and a half, I don't know if it caught on the Amazon algorithm or whatever, but it started getting really regular sales. And, then it started getting reviews from people I didn't know, which was great. And it started selling maybe 10, 20 a day and a little bit more from there. And it became kind of a big thing. So I went on to write some more books in that series. And then eventually the next year, I got a call from Andrews McMeel, publisher, and they wanted to acquire it. And I said no, because it was doing really well for me self-published. And we talked some more, and I decided to do it, make that experiment. So in April of last year, they republished the first book in the series. And then over the next couple months, we did the whole series. In February, the fifth and final book, they published that. And it's been doing really well. It's connecting with reluctant readers. I think, just on Amazon, it was a market that I wasn't really aware of, but of reluctant readers. And so parents, if a kid doesn't like reading, he almost certainly likes video games. And so, my book would come to the top of those lists. And since I wrote it for my 10-year-old self, those 10-year-old kids really, really connected with it, which led to good reviews, thankfully. And, that kind of built on itself. So that's kind of my story. I've written, obviously, several other self-published books. Superhero for a Day is one. I wrote one called Layla and Nugget, which is a series of mysteries for younger kids. But that's kind of my story, my journey, where I'm at right now.
Fantastic. That's a lot very fast, and we're gonna slow down. We're gonna pick some of that apart, because there's a whole bunch of great advice in there that I know you've got to share with us. But let me just start with a nice softball. Why middle grade? Did you always want to write middle grade? Was that the book you dreamed of?
Yeah, a couple reasons. One, I don't know how to write 100,000 word book, and so some short 20,000 words is more my speed. And also, like I said at the beginning, those were the books that I loved the most, and I just always remember I wanted to write something like that. And I work with kids at my church. I run the kids church at my church. I love that age group and that age range. And it always seemed to make sense for me to do that.
And how long had you been running and working with running the thing for the church and working with kids prior to writing Trapped for It in a video game?
About 8-10 years or so. So yeah, every week now we have about 100 kids down there, and I'm responsible for them for a while. So you got to figure out how to keep them from jumping off the walls, and and teach them something along the way.
Plus, what a wonderful opportunity every week for just first-rate market research.
Oh, absolutely. Sure. You get a lot of good stories.
And do you test things out on them? Do you have them come sit and let me read just a little bit of my new book to you?
No, nothing like that. I don't really push the books there, but I have had kids come up, and there's this kid that just recently, Arthur is a first grader, and he came up and he found my books in the library, and he was real excited, and he's telling the library to get more of them, which was real cool. So but no, I don't really test anything out on them.
God bless you, Arthur. Go out there and go to as many libraries as you can and spread the good word. So let's start with Trapped in a Video Game.
Sure.
Obviously, the title gives us a nice direct summary, which is great because the child reader knows what they're getting into. Parents know what the book is about. It's just very straightforward. But elaborate just a little bit. What is the story of Trapped in a Video Game?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a kid who gets trapped in a video game, but it was is kind of based on I don't know if you remember the '90s or Nickelodeon show Nickelodeon Arcade, and it was a regular Nickelodeon game show. But the end of the show, these doors would open up, smoke would pour out, and these kids, the two kids who won the game show portion, would run through, and they would end up in a video game. It was a '90s video game. And they would have to play the video game to win the prize. And so I just remember seeing that. I didn't have cable growing up, but my friend on the street, Anthony Laporta, did. And I saw Nickelodeon Arcade once over Anthony Laporta's house. And it just like blew my mind. And it was something I always thought about. And I'm sure it's something that a lot of kids always think about because there's a lot of things, there are a lot of books and movies and shows based on that idea of getting trapped in a video game. But I just remember for me, that was something I really identified with. So in the book, there's two main characters, Jesse and Eric. I picked those names because Jesse is my brother. He's the one who did the illustrations and the cover. Jesse loves video games, and the only person who loves video games maybe more than Jesse that I know is Eric, is my friend across the street. And so I remember, all the time going over Eric's house, and me and Jesse and Eric would always play, Super Smash Brothers, Mario Kart, and all those games together. So I just remember a lot of good times playing with those guys. So I wanted to kind of capture that spirit of that adventure, the video games and things like that. So in the book, Jesse is just kind of a serious kid. He doesn't like video games. Eric loves video games. And so Eric is trying out this new video game called Full Blast. There's aliens that come to Earth, and it's a whole thing. And so he ends up getting sucked inside. And he invites Jesse, unbeknownst to Jesse, what's going to happen. And so Jesse also gets sucked inside, and then obviously they have to get out. They're trapped. And so I tried to take it in a little bit of a different direction than you would usually think. And I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. So that's the first book in the series, and there, like I said, there's 5. So there's different types of video games that they go inside. And I had a lot of fun with that. Some of the call out to some of my favorite ones growing up and things like that.
And are you still a video gamer even now?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm not good at them, and I don't play them that much. But I got a Nintendo Switch last year. And so I just the other day I was playing Super Smash Brothers with Jesse and Eric, my brother Scott too. So I do a little bit, but I'm not very good at them.
Well, that's high living for folks watching or listening to this. That's that sweet author life you're dreaming of. Get yourself a Switch.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got my PlayStation 4 waiting for me in just the other room.
Oh, very good. Nice.
And well, let me ask you, when you come in here and it's 5-book series, did you know from book 1 that you wanted to do 4 additional books, or when did you start to plan those out? Or are you doing them just as they come, one at a time?
Kind of a little bit of both. I kind of envision it as a 3-book series at first, and I didn't have a specific endpoint in mind. I just had 2 different things that I wanted to hit. I wanted in one of them the video game characters to come out in the real world. And then I wanted to go back in time, like an 8-bit video game. So those were the only 2 that I had for sure. And then as I was going, I came up with some other ideas. And so I remember 1, 2, and 3. After 2, I thought I was going to finish with 3. I remember one specific moment when I was walking the dog halfway through writing book 3. Like, oh man, I got a great idea for 4. And then that turned into 4 and 5. And then by that point, it's you can only get sucked into so many video games. So I thought that was a good way to end it. But a little bit of both.
Well, I don't know. There's probably other children in the universe that could maybe be sucked into a future video game. Who knows?
Sure. Well, you never know.
And is that when you get your most brilliant, inspired ideas? Is when you're out walking the dog?
Yeah. Well, that helps. Yeah. Mostly when I sit down to write, and usually when I think that I'm not going to get it when I'm sit down to write. So that's when you don't sit down and write. But usually when you sit down and write. But yeah, if I'm thinking about it when I'm walking the dog, in the shower, when you're driving, you get some inspiration. But mostly it's when you're sitting down and doing the hard work, unfortunately.
It was Jessica Lawson 2 or 3 episodes back. I don't know. Check the back catalog, esteemed audience. They're all great shows, but Jessica Lawson is an interview you want to go back and check out. And she got her biggest idea when she was dusting. And I get a lot of my big ideas when I'm out taking my morning walks. Although right now it's summer break, so I'm taking my 5-year-old with me everywhere we go. When we go to the park, and I'll have half an idea, and then I have to say, "No, don't do that. Put that down." And then
Yeah, I hear you there.
I have to put a bookmark in that and check back later.
Sure.
And so something that you said in the description, and you said here as well, is that this is a book you've written specifically for reluctant readers. So I'm always curious, what are the best ways to write books for reluctant readers and to overcome that initial reluctance and get them interested?
Yeah, so I have a couple ideas about it. I think for me, I didn't set out to write a book for reluctant readers. I wasn't even aware of the term reluctant reader when I started writing. I just wrote a book that I wrote it specifically, for when I was 10 years old. And just thinking through every step of the way. There's not a lot of description in it because I didn't care for a lot of description when I was 10 years old. There's a lot of action. There's a lot of cliffhangers because that's what I liked when I was 10 years old. And so it turns out I liked a lot of the same things that reluctant readers like. So I got that feedback from, parents and teachers and in reviews and things like that. And so looking back at it, some of the things that I do is, I just naturally keep the chapters pretty short. So the chapters are about 1,000 words each. We got a lot of feedback that's, a good range for bedtime stories, kids that are maybe even 6, 7 years old and their parents read to them before bed. It's a good 10 minutes read aloud in class and things like that. So that 10-minute, 1,000 words works for me, for reluctant readers. One of the biggest things I think is just something that kids are interested in. And, I think for most reluctant readers, if you give them a book, and it's a good book, they'll probably like it. But, it's just that initial, like, ew, a book, right? And so I just think that having a video game in there kind of gets them. And then the first chapter, there's a lot of humor that kind of take them off guard. And so, like I said, it's just things that I liked when I was a kid, and it's 1,000-word chapters. There's like 20 of them, and almost every one of them has a cliffhanger. And I don't know, maybe that's not that artful of a thing to do, but I just know that I liked it when I was 10 years old. And, it's and it seems to connect well with those types of readers. So that kind of thing, just naturally the way I write, I don't use a lot of big words. And long sentences and things like that. And so, just the language, there's not a big barrier there. So I just think that, keeping that focus on me when I was a kid, it just naturally connects with those kind of readers. And fortunately, I'm into the same kind of things that they are.
Perfect. That makes life easy when you're naturally interested. So to get really nerdy really early,
Yeah.
with language and vocabulary, how do you screen to make sure that your vocabulary is age appropriate, that it's going to be easy to read for your target audience?
I don't have any way that I don't use tools or anything like that. My books, the Trapped in a Video Game books, are in Accelerated Reader Program, and so it gets a Lexile score through that. And the score is generally around 4th grade, late 3rd grade, early 4th grade. And that's just, I don't know, I think that's just generally how I write. I'll go through my books and sometimes I'll go back and see language I'll use where I'll say, okay, I can use a simpler word there. But just naturally, the way that I edit and write is using those shorter words and easier to understand words rather than a long 50-cent word. So that generally, I might have to go back and change a couple things when I'm reading through and catch a couple things. But generally, it's in that 4th grade level, and that's just the way that I write usually.
Brilliant. And let's stay nerdy for a minute. Do you have a specific sort of guideline for a cutoff on how many words per sentence, how many sentences per paragraph, or is it just by eye, kind of you've got a feel for what you want and go from there?
Yeah, definitely by eye. I mean, I do, if I see big paragraphs, that's a little bit of a red flag to me. And so I go back through that paragraph, and it's got to be a really interesting paragraph to be that long. If it's, and so it's laid out on a page. I see, I write in Scrivener, and in there it's a little bit harder to tell how long things are because of the size of the page. But when you see it on an actual page, sometimes I go back and I'm like, ooh, that's long, and see if I can break it up. Generally, I'm writing a lot of dialogue in there. And so that's real short, going back and forth. But in the long paragraphs, a lot of times it's an observation or maybe a jokey thing, and I'm okay keeping that long. But if it's a long description or a long something else, that's a little bit of a red flag to me to kind of go back and look at it, see if there's some way that we can maybe chop that up a little bit. And again, it's not something that I look too far into, because if I'm reading through the story and it's something that's really engaging, I don't think that kids care that much if it's a long paragraph. They're not going to get too scared away. But especially at the beginning of the book, to try to stay away from that.
That makes sense. Got to make sure you've got them fully hooked, and then maybe drop a longer sentence or two in there.
Absolutely.
Do you use beta readers, or do you get some of the kids from your youth class to read an early manuscript? How do you get feedback before it's out in the world?
Boy, I don't too much. No, I when I first started, my cousin Grant was in 6th grade, and he was kind of in my target audience range. He was kind of like me when I was a kid, and so I gave him the books to read. And he was very into it, and so that was a good sign. But now I kind of have a feel. I'm a little bit more confident in it, and I don't have too many beta readers. I give it to my wife to read, and she picks up on a lot of stuff that I won't. And I give it to my brother to read, and usually 1 or 2 other people. But I don't have a lot of beta readers. And again, maybe I probably should have more, but at this time I don't.
Well, what you're doing is working. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask about your brother Jesse, right?
Yep.
And Jesse designs your covers, does your illustrations. So what does that collaboration look like? How often are you meeting? How are you working out the business between you?
Yeah, so I live in Ohio. He lives in Florida, and it's been interesting. It was interesting getting started, because you're getting started, and the track record for indie books making money is not good. He's a professional illustrator, and he gets paid actual money. And so I'm asking him to put a lot of hours into a cover that's probably not going to make a lot of money. And so, we're kind of trying to figure out a solution to that. So fortunately, we worked out a thing where, we started out and I paid him the brother rate. I paid him less than market value, but we kind of worked out a little a tier system where, if it hit this amount, or this amount, and then finally if it hit this amount of sales, it would get up to the market rates value. And so the first draft in the video game, we got to that market rate value real soon. And then fortunately I've been able just to pay him the market rate going forward. So that was the thing that could have been a little tricky at the beginning, but it worked out well. And it's the collaboration part is something that we've gotten better at for sure. We use Slack to go back and forth, and I'll send him a lot of references up front. We'll go through movie posters, video games, and I'll find things, and I'm really interested in the composition and the colors and things like that of the cover, because it's important as an indie author. That's your big marketing tool is the cover. And so I'm really interested in, and I focus a lot on that. And so I have a lot of thoughts on it, much to his chagrin sometimes. But I send him some stuff, a lot of references over Slack, and then he'll do a sketch, send it back to me. We'll talk about that. He'll put that sketch into the computer, do the line work, and then the colors. And by that time, now we don't have that much feedback at the end, which is good. So we've worked some stuff out. Like I said, a lot of references, the more the better, and a lot of communication over the phone.
I'd imagine being in different states is a little bit helpful
Yeah.
when you're working on an artistic endeavor like that. Because I know our artists of all kinds tend to be a little bit passionate. I know I've butted heads with illustrators in the past, and they've butted heads with me because everybody's got their feelings. It's our art.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, it's tough, it's tricky because it's your brother and you can't burn that bridge. So fortunately, again, at the beginning, it was a little dicey sometimes, but we figured out a good way to make it work. And it's just, again, respecting each other's opinions and respecting each other's work. And it's a real collaboration. So I'm real happy with the way that it's worked out, for sure.
And it probably bears emphasizing for those listening who were thinking, "Well, I've got a brother who's always enjoyed art." Your brother is a professional artist. Has been doing this for a long time. Other people pay him money for this.
Oh yeah, he's very good. So if he wasn't very good, we wouldn't be doing this. But he's very good, which is, again, I'm very fortunate. So.
Those things I emphasize when I do events and people come up and they ask me, like, "Well, I'm really nervous about doing the cover myself." And I said, "Well, has anybody ever paid you to design a cover before?" Well, if that hasn't happened, maybe don't start with yours.
Yeah, and honestly, that was, if he wasn't as good as he is, I wouldn't have gone the indie route. I would have gone the traditional route. But I knew that I would have a much better shot of being successful with him on board, because he can do a good job at it.
Was it a concern? I know, obviously, now that the book is traditionally published and the illustrations have been maintained, it's worked out. I had an illustrator partner early on. We went back and forth, best friends since the third grade, and we were forever being told no, the traditional route, that you couldn't have it already pre-established author illustrator collaboration. Was that an issue for you, or was it just, hey, we're already doing this ourselves? Why get a publisher involved at this point? What was it that made you decide indie was going to be the preferable route?
Well, like I said, I was selling on Amazon at that point, and I knew the platform. I'd found some indie books, some indie middle grade books that were doing well, and kind of studied them, and kind of had an idea about what to do at that point. And honestly, I was just like, hey, we'll try it. I knew that we could do the cover. I was confident. Pretty confident in my writing and editing ability and things like that, and knew what works on Amazon on the platform. So I thought we'd try it and go from there.
Let's talk a little bit about that. What did selling things other than books on Amazon teach you about and give you the skills to prepare you for now selling books on Amazon?
Yeah. Well, one of the things is that, so what we do is we'll find things, and basically buy them from manufacturer, buy them wholesale, and resell them on Amazon. And people always ask me what I sell, and I'll say anything that sells. And generally, I'm looking for something that has a high enough rank and a price point where I can make money. And at that point, I don't care that much what it is. If it'll sell, it'll sell. So kind of taking that same approach with books. I have a plugin on Google Chrome that tells me the rank of books, and up to pretty recently, it told me the history rank of the book. So you can just browse through Amazon and see at a glance what is selling well. You might hear about books all the time, and you look on Amazon, and maybe that book is selling really well, in bookstores, or it's doing well in schools and things like that. But it's not selling well on Amazon, or at least well enough to make a living. And so, that's not something that's worth emulating. But if it has a good enough rank, and we look at the rank history for a long time, you can say, hey, this can work, and there are some things that I saw that were working over the long term on Amazon, and selling those things also that weren't in books. It teaches you to kind of look at things from a little bit of different angle, look at things that people wouldn't expect or wouldn't think about. And there's, teaches you that there's markets for everything. So, for instance, for a while, when we first started, we would buy things just like from Walmart in Walmart clearance or Best Buy. One of our best sellers was we would buy these portable CD players from Best Buy. We had like a 5% back on grocery. So we would buy the Best Buy gift card from grocery, get free gas through that, and then do it. But people would buy them like crazy. And it's a portable CD player. Like, who uses a portable CD player? But enough people use it that they buy it and they do it. And we found a couple different categories and things like that. So just kind of looking at things, thinking through it, like somebody's on Amazon looking for something. And so, you see what they're buying and you can kind of connect the dots of what they're looking for. So it kind of taught me that in a good way to look through Amazon specifically for, because if you're an indie, especially if you're an indie middle grade author, you're selling a lot of paperback books. And so because you're selling a lot of paperback, you're selling, almost exclusively on Amazon. Now maybe it has like a local connection or something like that, and you're selling in local bookstores. But for me, I was interested in selling on Amazon and seeing what works on Amazon. And so those rankings and, help you connect the dots and figure things out a little bit.
Jen, you mentioned a plugin on Chrome. What's the name of that plugin for anybody listening that wants to get it?
Yeah, so the one, because I just looked because I thought you might ask. So it's called DS Amazon Quick View. And all it is when you type in a search on Amazon and you're scrolling through the results, those results aren't sorted by, and so, if you sell on Amazon, everything has a bestseller rank. And it's not just books, it's in electronics, it's in home and everything like that. So that DS Amazon Quick View will tell you as you're scrolling through the results, not on just the product page, but on that search results page, it'll tell you what that bestseller rank is. And it's not sorted. There's no sort by bestseller rank. And so a lot of times when you're scrolling through things and you might even see a bunch of reviews, but that doesn't necessarily correlate to the bestseller rank. So by, a plugin like that, you can go through and you can see what the rank is on things pretty quickly and pretty easily. So I use that. There was a tool called Keepa, Keepa, and that would give you the rank over time for stuff, which is excellent. And unfortunately, that became a paid product, and I haven't started paying for it yet. But if you're really interested in that, maybe you could look at it for a month, and it can give you a good idea of things. And
are you still selling on Amazon other things that aren't books?
Yeah, I do. I do that. So I do both. And so, certain times of the year I'll focus on one or the other. Generally, the selling on Amazon part is pretty automated. And I have some people who help me out with the manual labor, the packing part of that stuff. And so it doesn't take up too much of my time right now, but I still do that. Yeah.
And then are you headed to the post office a few times a week? Are you
No, well, here's a plug for selling on Amazon for any authors who want to get involved. I do Amazon FBA is called Fulfilled by Amazon. And so it's so Amazon, all I do is I get the product and then I'll label it. Sometimes it's a multi-pack or things like that. So I'll package it together. And then I put it in everything that I get in big boxes. And then UPS picks it up from me, gives it to Amazon's warehouse. Amazon's warehouse then ships it out to customers, deals with customer service and things like that. So I don't have to do things on a daily basis. I can just send it. Usually I send in a couple shipments a month, and then they take care of the rest. And then from the back end, I'll adjust pricing and things like that. But it's pretty simple once you get started. There's a big learning curve at the beginning, but it works out really well for me right now.
So how long did it take you to get up and running then?
It only took a couple months for me because I was really into it. So I found those CD players really early on and some things really early on. And like once you make a couple bucks, it really started the wheels turning. And so I started doing every second I got. My wife was in on it, especially at the beginning too. So together we were working on it a lot. And it just took a couple months for that to get up and running. But generally, it takes a little bit longer than that. And also, I made some unwise decisions with buying too many products at the beginning and threw a lot of money around that I probably shouldn't have. But it all worked out.
So you just end up with like a garage or a basement full of garbage that nobody wants?
Well, Amazon's warehouse did, but it all eventually sold.
Gotcha. Cool. I won't ask you a bunch of Amazon questions, but I
Sure.
love that you start off as a seller for Amazon and come to indie authorship with just a unique perspective, ready to play that a lot of other authors do not have going in.
Yeah, it helped me out. It gave me a leg up, at least in terms of yeah, perspective of looking at things for sure.
Gotcha. Let's pivot a bit and let's talk about another series that you've got, which is Layla and Nugget. So tell us, just give us a quick overview of the series. What's the deal with Layla and Nugget?
Sure. Well, Layla and Nugget solve mysteries. It's you know, kind of it's for a little bit younger age group. So I have a daughter named Layla, and we have a dog named Nugget. Layla in real life is 2 years old, and nobody wants to read about a 2-year-old solving mysteries. So in the book, she's in 3rd grade. But they are a very enthusiastic duo, and there's just, you know, it's a little mysteries. I kind of, when I was doing research for it, it's based a lot on the formula that a lot of those books use. But there's called Nancy Drew and the Clue Crew is like a junior Nancy Drew book, and so it follows that same kind of formula where there's you know, a mystery. It's around 10,000 words, and then there's, you know, a couple false leads. But sprinkled throughout those, there's little clues that get you to the real thing. So I've done 3 of those books. And I've really enjoyed doing them for sure. And I'm excited to have my daughter read them when she's old enough.
And does Nugget does he aware of his superstardom? Has it gone to his head?
The only thing he's aware of is if he's gone on a walk yet today, and if not, why not? So no, unfortunately, he could not. He is not, but yeah, I'm sure Layla will feel very. She'll be very into it when she gets old enough, for sure.
We hope.
Well, she'll enjoy being a star at the very least, whether she likes the books or not. She'll like being a star.
And I know those are targeted toward, I believe you've got a list for 1st and through 3rd grade
Yeah.
versus Trapped in a Video Game, which is what, 3rd through 5th grade.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the biggest difference between those age groups? What are the biggest differences you're making in your writing to accommodate them?
Well, okay, good question. So the Layla Nugget book, I do make a conscious effort as far as language goes, where there's no tricky words. You know, we're trapped in a video game. Yeah, they're at an old enough age where they can kind of figure it out or press on, or, you know. But Layla and Nugget, I really try to make it to where a younger kid can read it. And so I am pretty careful about language with those to make every word a word that they can sound out or figure out. And so I'm very much more conscious of language with those. You know, they're a lot shorter. I still keep the chapters around maybe 700 to 1,000 words. But it's 10,000 words total. The words are much bigger on the page, and the paragraphs are easier to read. So those are the main things. And then the Trapped in a Video Games, the plot gets pretty complex at points. You know, I figure, you know, those kids are watching, you know, Marvel movies, are watching a lot of stuff that, you know, we don't, they kind of take for granted that these kids are used to following along with more complex plots. But I do try to keep it pretty simple for the Layla Nugget series.
Yeah, no, anybody that walked into Avengers Endgame and they didn't see the rest of the Marvel movies, best of luck to you. I don't know how you're going to follow that.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, you know, you got kids watching those and they're following along. They're probably explaining it to people walking out of the theater. So.
Yeah, no, I was one of them. I was like, wait a minute, it's been a while. Refresh my memory. What was the deal with that?
Yeah.
I saw Ant-Man. I didn't memorize it.
No, well,
me again.
Yeah, no, you needed to go back and didn't you know you need to go back and watch Thor: The Dark World before you walked in the theater. So.
Yeah, I was shocked. I was like, oh, I think I have a hazy recollection of having watched that one. Oh, well.
I don't think many people did.
Well, but let's go back a little bit and talk a little more about Trapped in a Video Game. Not the book itself, but the experience of publishing. You said it was up for about a month and a half, just sitting there, not doing anything. And then the Amazon algorithms caught up to it, and you started to sell. What do you think it is that changed?
Well, you know, so it wasn't doing nothing. It was selling, you know, maybe one a day or one every other day, and then it would kind of climb up to 2 a day and things like that. So I do think it kind of started showing up, and customers also bought. And that's where I started getting things. And then also the keywords that I was bidding on Amazon ads. So, nobody really knows how Amazon ads work, but my theory is kind of Amazon, when you start a campaign, is going to shoot out those keywords and spend through money like crazy. And then they see how it performs, because they don't want to show a bunch of, they have limited space in front of customers. So they're not going to show a book, even if people are willing to spend a lot, if that book isn't selling well. So compared to how many views per how many people click on it versus how many people buy it. So I think that, going forward, at least I know that Trapped in a Video Game performs unbelievable on Amazon ads. And so I think that it really kind of caught on that algorithm too, where, it was a higher than normal number of people that saw the ad, were clicking on it, and then were going ahead and buying it. So they were showing that more. Once people bought for a keyword, so say there was a keyword, books for boys or something like that. Once people start buying the book for that, even if they're buying it through a link that they clicked on it, that's an ad, that still counts in Amazon's algorithm. And so it'll start to, the book, in my experience, starts to appear higher and higher in organic search as well. What I believe happened, again, nobody knows for sure, but I've been studying this for my Amazon business, and then again for the books, that, as it happened, it started climbing in those Amazon ads, it started getting better placement in Amazon ads, and also started getting better placement in the organic search results for keywords that, were connecting with my audience. And then it also started getting put into customers also bought for similar books. And now listen, that is not easy to do, and I haven't duplicated it for Layla and Nugget for other books I've worked on. But it is pretty magical once it starts working, because Amazon just starts selling it on its own.
So yeah, no, talk nerdy to me some more. This is what esteemed audience tunes in for. They're looking for this. So when you're going in to pick your keywords, are you individually going through and picking your keywords? Are you just letting Amazon choose them for you and do its thing?
Yeah, so I do both. I don't, when I first started, I tried, or I looked at the Amazon suggested keywords, because you can pick automatic keywords, which if you are just an indie author, you can't see what keywords they're picking, which I don't find super helpful. But you can also, when you're picking manual keywords, you can let Amazon pick them and just see what it picks. And so the first time I did that, I looked at their keywords. I'm like, we're not doing this, because it's picking keywords like books, or like the word for, FOR, and like, I don't know, stuff like that. And so I didn't. But since then, I've run a campaign with those, and they perform a lot better than you would think. So I don't know why. But at the beginning, especially, I picked keywords that I thought. So what I did, again, this is very nerdy, but if you say this esteemed audience is up for it. So
what we're living for, baby.
So I would start to type in, I would get an idea for a keyword, and start to type it in. So let's say, books for, and so start typing in books for kids. And so when you're typing in books for kids, it'll autofill books for kids, 9 to 12 books for kids. And so then just using all those autofill suggestions, because those are things that people search for. And now all those autofill suggestions are also mine. And sometimes I might dig 2 or 3 deep on those, where I'll take one of those. And sometimes I'll just type books for, and then see what it suggests, and then start type A, B, C, and go through. So things like that I did. And then again, putting all those up and just seeing which one of those delivers results, which one of them don't. Going through books, the customers also bought books, and then going through their customers also bought. I got a lot of keywords through that way. And again, using authors and titles and anything I can think of. And then again, just throwing anything out there, video game related terms, toy related terms, things like that. And then finally, I did maybe a year into it, get KDP Rocket, which is a tool that if you put in maybe an author name or a book name, it'll spit back a bunch of results. And so I've used that, and that does help. And, so I've taken all those different things, put them in. And again, the nice things with Amazon ads, you could throw everything at it, and Amazon's pretty good at figuring out what's going to work, because they really want to spend your money. So they'll figure out what they spend through stuff really quick, figure out what's going to work. and then they go from there. So you can throw a bunch at the wall and see what sticks, and then stuff that sticks, take that and kind of build off of that and think through different ideas from stuff that sticks.
So do you set like a daily budget, monthly budget? What do you recommend, and where do you set your bids?
Right. So, again, it's whatever you're most comfortable with. For me, it's probably, for me, I want to see if it's doing well. And for me, if it's break even, if I calculate out to something that's break even, which is usually like 30%, whatever the metric they give you is, but if it's around 30%, that's about break even, because I know different future books in the series people go on and buy and things like that. So if it's break even, like, spend my money. I put the daily budget for a lot of my campaigns is $1,000 because I want them to spend as much as possible, and they never spend $1,000, or they haven't yet. But if they did, I'm fine with that, because I know for every dollar I spend, I'm going to make $1.50 or whatever. So I set it real high, and I usually, the bids, I'll start them out 25, 30 cents. And then sometimes, if it's spending through a lot, but it's not giving a lot of sales, I'll experiment with putting it down. I'll have bids that are as low as 5 cents or 10 cents for a really popular keyword that's not quite related to my book, but does deliver some sales. And then occasionally, depending on the type of ad and things like that, I'll even go up a little bit. And again, I'll just, I'll look at it. I'm not as diligent as I should be about going back every day or all the time and seeing how things play out. I just want to get things that are roughly good enough without me having to put a lot of hours into them every day, and just letting them run it and go from there.
So how much time are you spending typically on a day just on Amazon ads?
Now, like, hardly any time. I mean, I'll check in once a week for a little bit. And I know a lot of people put a lot more time in, and I would probably get better results if I did put more time in. It's just, I'll check in every morning for 15 minutes or 30 minutes or so when I'm starting them, to see how things are performing, adjusting bids, and maybe adding and subtracting keywords and things like that. But for my goal is I want to get it up and running, and then go from there. Amazon ads also, for me right now, I've kind of found are good at predicting how well a book is going to do. So Trapped in a Video Game just organically performs really well. It just really connects with an audience. And so the Amazon ads perform really well. And I don't have to work too hard to get my costs down for those. But, Layla and Nugget, it connects okay. Like, the books perform okay. And so those ads, they just perform okay. I have to work a little bit harder to get them to make money and things like that. And then I've had other books that's just, I've tried and it's, it's not working. And so I'm just like, I'll forget it. And it, I don't have to put much more effort and time into the series. It was fun to write the series and it was good, but it's just not connecting on Amazon right now. And so, it gives me a piece to, like, walk away and not bash my head against the wall. I guess maybe that's an advertisement for writing more books, so you get more to work with, and you're not putting all your hopes on one book or one series. But for me, that's kind of the deal there. So if something's not performing that well, I'll just turn the ads off or turn the daily bids real low. And if something is performing really well, I'll put, a lot more time into the series, and more time into creating more ads and things like that.
Well, that makes sense. And then, are you, with a series, are you advertising or running different separate campaigns for every book in the series? Are you focusing your efforts on book one and counting on book one to get people hooked enough to keep going?
Yeah, so I do. If I'm just advertising one book, I will just advertise book one. I've tried advertising book two in the series to disastrous results. Even the Layla and Nugget book two, it's not a continuing story. I've tried book two and it just doesn't work as well because people see two and they assume they need book one. There is a different type of ad, and it's available to publishers. And so my publisher started running it, and I was trying to figure out if there's a way I could run it for my indie books. And there's like a little bit of a backdoor way to get in. to it, and you can find that online, and I kind of forget exactly how I did it, but you can run series ads. So Amazon has these banners up top where you can, I forget the exact name for it, but there's a series of books. If you have a series of books, you can advertise all three of them. So I do run those for Layla and Nugget. And they perform okay during like Christmas. They perform really, really well. But during the year, I really dial back the spend on that because it just performs okay. But that is something else that I've done. And for a series is a good way to go.
That makes sense. And then I know that obviously you're an Amazon ninja, so that's your primary focus. Have you experimented going wider with other distribution models as well, or is you pretty much Amazon exclusive most of the time?
Yeah, Amazon exclusive. My traditionally published books, they are obviously available on other platforms. And they just don't do as well. So, I'm sure people have had success on other platforms, but for me, it's easy just to keep on Amazon and things that I know and focus on that.
That makes sense. And then broaden this out a little bit because I know we did a deep nerdy dive, but I love it. And I know that there are members of an esteemed audience going, "Yes, thank you. This is what I've been waiting for. I love it." But other than AMS ads, what other forms of marketing have you done, and what have you had success with?
Like nothing. Is the short answer. I haven't taken the time to learn Facebook ads or anything like that. And honestly, the Amazon is such a workhorse at delivering sales that for me it makes sense to spend time learning that and to focus on that rather than focus on things that might produce a little bit of sales. So I worked with my publisher on teachers guides and things like that, and honestly I'm newer to that world, and it seems like those might take time to kind of connect with that. And so, they're pushing that with different librarians and teachers and things like that. So we have those teachers guides, and I've tried doing some stuff along those lines. Locally, I've reached out to a lot of schools and librarians and things like that. So I do like talking to kids. I do like that kind of thing. So that's more selfish, I guess, for me to kind of get to do more school visits and things like that because I enjoy it. But as far as sales and marketing goes, I've kind of been sticking with what I know works well and can deliver a lot of sales.
And I know you've got over 300 reviews on Trapped in a Video Game, and lots of reviews over your other books as well. Are those just a result of your sales, or have you actively solicited those reviews? What have you done to get so many great reviews?
Yeah, so that is
other than the obvious of write a quality book.
Rob, that doesn't matter. It's I've just yeah, so I think it's important to get a couple reviews, and I don't think you need a lot of reviews. And I kind of, again, going back to selling on Amazon, you see a lot of items that don't have many reviews at all, have like 2 reviews. And like one of them is 3 stars, and they still sell pretty well. So people give things a chance, especially at a low price point like this. If you're selling a paperback kids book, maybe you're pricing up to $10. I mean, mine are $8. And so people are willing to take a chance on it if it seems like, again, the cover's appealing. If it's something that they think their kid would like, they're willing to spend $8 on that. So I don't think having a million reviews is that important, but I do think it is important to at least have a couple reviews. So I don't know what the Amazon terms of service say about this, but for the first Trapped in a Video Game book, I just on Facebook one day, and I don't have an author page or anything like that, but just like to friends and family, hey, if you want to review this book, let me know. If you have kids and they want to read it, let me know and I'll send you a PDF. So it got 30 people and sent them all PDFs, and maybe 15 of them wrote a review, and that was fine. So that was it was really informal, and then going forward. I have done the same type of thing with my email list. I have a very small email list, but for a book recently, I was just like, hey, if anybody wants to review this, let me know. I'll give you a PDF, give them a PDF, and then sent them a link. So it's not a verified review on Amazon, but in my experience, most people don't care about that too much. As long as it's an honest review and things like that, I think that is fine. So that's kind of how I went about it. And then again, as sales pick up, people review it. And in my experience, having a little blurb in the back of the book does nothing. Like, people review it if they really like it or if they really hate it. And especially for a kid's book, where it's more of a gift instead of something that is more of a gift for the kid. It's a very different product than an adult book. And so a lot of people just don't feel that call to review it, which is fine, which means that you got to sell a lot of books if you want to get a lot of reviews, in my experience. And again, there's different ways I know people have done. In my opinion, it's not that important to get many reviews above 10, but that's just my opinion and from looking at it.
Oh, your opinion's what we're going by here tonight. That's what we want to know. What? Oh man, so many more questions on the back of that one. Namely, I'm assuming it's probably a little bit easier to get reviews from your Facebook friends and family when you're writing a shorter book, 25,000 words or less.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, if I was writing 100,000, I wouldn't want to review it. And so yeah, I think it's a little bit of an easier ask to do that. And you also gotta know that most people aren't going to do that anyways. And so I try not to be obnoxious with it, and I just basically did it for the first book in the series, just to get things rolling. But I think that's I'm not going to speak for Amazon's terms and services. But I think that, it's well within the spirit of the rules, and I think it's fine to get a couple of reviews like that. So,
Mr. Bezos, if you're listening, we both wish to be 100% fully compliant. Thank you so much for your wonderful platform.
Thank you.
There we go. Good save. Well, let's talk a little bit about your newsletter, because you've got a fun title for it. I was looking at it. What do you call your newsletter? The Inside something?
What is it? Insider Club? Is that what it says?
Yes, the Insider Club.
Yeah.
And you're offering goodies and early chapters and extra material. So with your newsletter, how often are you sending out your newsletter, and what kind of goodies are you offering?
All right, maybe we can just skip this question because it is not very often. It is almost nothing. So again, I think this is an illustration of just how the adult market is a lot different from the children's market, because in my experience, these are the kids picking up the paper book, and even if they really, really, really like it, like, they're just not going to sign up for an email, for whatever reason. And so the email is like embarrassingly small. It's mostly people that would sign up when I had book 3 out and they were trying to figure out when book 4 was going to come out. So they would sign up for that. And since the last book was available for pre-order in the summer, signups just went like downhill from almost nothing to very practically nothing. And so since, I could see that people weren't signing up to get the goodies. I don't give a lot of goodies. I just don't spend a lot of time with that because it doesn't seem like that's what they're looking for. And so anyway, so basically I wrote that at the beginning thinking that it was something that they want. I think that's a good lesson, just to be able to look at something and to look at objectively. Same thing with the Amazon ad, same thing with everything. Look at objectively. Is this working? Is this what people want? No. Well, what do people want? And then let's give them that.
Makes sense. And then a couple more nerdy questions, and we'll go out to some broader stuff. But you mentioned that the traditional call to action page there at the end. Yeah. Oh, reader, didn't you have a wonderful time reading this book? Please review it. Please tell your friends. Please send a tweet. Is kind of wasted because the younger readers probably don't have Twitter, probably don't have that option, and they don't care what you said there about going to review. Like, I enjoyed your book. I read it. I don't need homework. Set that down. So what sort of back matter and front matter do you make allowance for? What would you recommend including, if anything?
Yeah. So again, I I think that it's very I think making it very clear what the rest of the books in the series are. So with my publisher, we've just set up a page for the next reprint that spells out, even though the rest of the books, there's a little picture of each book in the back of the page, in the back of the book, along with some of the other publishers' other titles, and there's a page at the front of my book that just says the titles. There's a specific page that we set up in the back of the book that says, hey, continue the adventure. It's got all 4 stories, and then it's got a little summary for each story to get them a little bit more interested. I think that's probably the most important thing, because, I've had people, write reviews, write to me like, hey, my kid really loved Trapped in a Video Game Book 1. We really hope you write more. Like, well, I wrote a lot more, and it's very clear. So making things, because a lot of, it's a grandma buying a book for the kid. And so it's not the kid, a grandma they might see twice a year or something like that, And so you got to really spell things out. Here are the books. Here's what it's about. It's very exciting, and go get it. And Amazon, if you're with a publisher, they make it much easier to do that on the page. You can have an A+ detail page, which I can have now for Trapped in a Video Game, and it talks about the rest of the books in the series and things like that. And just anything that spells things out like that really seems to you see an uptick every time you're able to do something like that, just to spell out, hey, here's the rest of the books in the series, just so you know, here's what it's about. They're really cool. So
I love the idea of somebody who has your book right there, that can't be bothered to check the front or the back. They go to your website to find your email. They've already got Amazon. Can't be bothered to check that. Can't do a search for Dustin Brady. Go to your website, ignore all the other books listed, and straight to asking you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very frustrating, but it happens sometimes.
Readers are magical and mysterious sometimes. So let's talk about your experience now with a traditional publisher. What advantages has that opened up for you that weren't available to you as an indie? And what's been your experience so far?
Yeah, so it's been really interesting. Where today's still, so my book is really geared towards appealing to people as an indie book. Everything from the title that spells out the premise to the cover, which is just which is very simple for the first book. It just shows the main character, and the description and things like that is really geared towards honestly selling well on Amazon specifically, and appealing to people through there. And so traditionally, it's kind of taken that, and as being traditionally published, I was surprised by how much more it bumped things up on Amazon specifically. So my rank was very steady and was very good as an indie author, where it was a bestseller rank of maybe like 1,000 to 1,500 in books, to where now it's under 500, 400, 300. Sometimes just from that switch to traditional publisher. So just being nerdy a little bit on Amazon again, it opens up. You can apply for some additional categories, which allows it to be a bestseller in more than one category. It opens up that A+ page. And people do people do sometimes discount things, seeing that it's an independently published thing, and you can only go so far with that. And so it has opened things up on Amazon a lot. So it's really helped that. And then it's just, again, more, and honestly, it hasn't taken that same success and gone to bookstores, because that's a totally different, mechanism. And there's this whole machine of reviews and the library school journal and things like that, where it's this whole other world that, the way that they published it, it was just very quick, boom, 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 put it out there. And so it didn't get its day in the sun with that world. And so, it is available in bookstores, and it sells some copies there. It is available in libraries now, which I really like, which is really cool. And schools, I've gotten a lot more feedback from teachers and schools, which is really rewarding that way. So it has helped improve sales, but strangely enough, mostly on Amazon in my experience. And again, I think that's mostly because the book was designed specifically to appeal to audiences directly on Amazon. So just kind of amplified that. But they've been really great in helping out different avenues that I wouldn't have been able or that I wouldn't have done myself. So an audiobook with a really great narrator. It's a helping with foreign rights and things like that. And again, it gives you. I found that it's easier to talk to schools and to get into places with that traditional publishing background. So again, I still publish indie books. I still love it, and it's just a little bit of a different thing. And I plan on doing some traditional books, and going forward, I plan on structuring even the way that I write and think about those books differently to appeal more to a traditional market.
In what way would you approach a book differently for the traditional market?
Yeah, so going back, so for like I said, with Trapped in a Video Game, it's a very it tells you what the book is about right in the title. And with the traditional market, because that's the only way that you're going to get to people. People are scrolling through a thing, they see, oh, Trapped in a Video Game, okay, cool. With a traditional market, you get people selling your book for you, ideally, right? You get librarians, you have booksellers and things like that. And so those people, you don't need to like, wait, it's about a kid trapped in a video game. You can be a little bit more, artful with it. And same thing with the book. My book is, there's not a lot of deep themes in there, and it's a fun adventure book. There's some good lessons, some good themes, but honestly, like it doesn't have that stuff that those people that are reviewing the books are looking for, and I'm fine with that because I know that I can write those kind of things. It's just not what I wanted when I was 10-year-old, so that's not what I put in Trapped in a Video Game. And so making it a little bit more complex book, it'd probably be longer than 20,000 words. And adding, some and weaving themes through it and a lot more character development and things like that to get people on board that are librarians and that are reviewers and things like that to kind of work in that machine. I'm proud of Trapped in a Video Game. Like I love it. And it's something that teachers and parents, every feedback that I've gotten from them, they love, and a lot of times it's like surprise love. Like I hate video games and I thought I would hate this book. But it was a really fun book and I really enjoyed it. And that was the goal of that book was, it's called Trapped in a Video Game. And the goal was if you think this book is going to appeal to you, I want it to be the very best version of that book to appeal to you. But in a traditional market, you're pitching to different people, and you can still be really, really fun and really, really enjoyable for kids, but you have to work extra hard to make it enjoyable for somebody who's a little bit more snotty and reviews books and is a gatekeeper. And I'm fine with that, and I'm excited to do things like that going forward. But for that's kind of how I'm approaching traditional books versus an indie book, which is I have a very specific audience in mind, and I'm writing very much towards that audience, so their parents will get it, and so that audience will enjoy it.
That makes sense. Love it. While we're talking nerdy, I have another thing I wanted to ask you about. You mentioned cover design specifically, and also description, and I want to talk about both those things. I noticed your description is very brief and to the point. And also I wanted to make the comment that going back to readers being magical and mysterious, I hate video games, so I was surprised I enjoyed this book, Trapped in a Video Game. Oh, readers.
Well, those are parents reading it to their kids, like my kid likes video games and I gotta read this dumb book to him. So yeah.
It's one of my favorite reviews I ever got on one of mine. Is this book cost $1? It was a pizza delivery, which is always 99 cents available now. And they said, I expected this book to suck, but it was actually really good. And then they went on to praise the book. Why did you waste
$1? Yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad I turned you around and you had a good time. But let's talk description and let's talk covers, because I know your descriptions are very short. Very much letting the reader who's already reluctant, or the parent who's reluctant, you give it straight to the point. So what are your tips for writing descriptions that are going to hook those types of readers? And what are the things that you're looking for when you're designing your covers to appeal?
Okay. Yeah. So I'll hit descriptions first. So descriptions, I'll write a description that I think is going to be good up front, and I'll put it up there, and then I'll wait and look at reviews. And reviews are really, really helpful because people will tell you what they really want in reviews. So I spent a lot of time, looking at my reviews, looking at other people's reviews to see what people actually really like and really value from their books. And so from my books, Trapped in a Video Game, for me, I think for kids' books, the most important thing is that first, I just have like a couple sentences up top and it's bolded. And for me, that's the most important part for, if somebody's reading through it and things like that. Because the summary, again, it's a parent, they're buying it for a kid a lot of times, and they don't care what the book is about. And so I do keep it short and to the point. But that first sentence is bolded and it kind of speaks directly to that parent. And so, I think that it might say, now, and I used it off of ad copy that worked well. So, one thing that I put in there is like, get kids to put down the controller and pick up a book or something like that. Because I found in my reviews that that's what parents wanted. Parents wanted their kids to stop playing video games for a few minutes and read a book. So, I made sure to put that in the description up front. So I think paying attention to reviews is a good way to find keywords, to find things that people are actually looking for. And then put it in there and go back and change things and update things. And then again, people, in my experience, parents, they'll read that first sentence. Okay, this seems kind of like what I want. They'll go down, they'll look at reviews, and then they'll look inside the book sometimes and things like that. But for kids' books, I don't think the description is that important. It's just you want a couple sentences that tell people that this is what it is. If this is what you want, this is what you got. And then for the book cover, so when I first started, I was looking at books that were doing really well. And the ones that I saw that were doing the best for middle grade indie published were by a guy named, that goes by the name Marcus Emerson. And he writes Diary of a Sixth Grade Ninja. And that book has been selling unbelievably well as an indie book since like 2013. And so he's just crushing it. And I saw his books and I saw that he did two things that I think were really smart. That he put just like the premise of the book as the title, Diary of a Sixth Grade Ninja, it's about, and things like that. And I think that's really, really smart for indie authors because, again, you're just putting out there, you're trying to promise something that somebody wants. Right. And so, I'm trying to get my kid to read. That's a target audience. And he likes ninjas, he likes video games, he likes this. And so that's right in the title. And it's not, you don't have to guess. And then the cover, again, most people are seeing it as a thumbnail. And so I want, especially with the first book in the series, to be just like an appealing picture, and it's big, and it's like a main character. And that's just something that, that's something I saw that Marcus Emerson does. That's something that I try to do a lot, is something that would be appealing to that target audience, that on a very, very small thumbnail they would see, and that would get them to click on it. So those are the things that I kind of try to do with the covers and with the description.
Makes sense to me. And then, of course, you've got nice, bright colors. And I noticed your name is pretty small, relatively, certainly to the title and the character. And is that just because nobody really cares about the writer until later, or?
Yeah, that's why. I mean, I can't stress enough how much people don't know you when they're on Amazon and don't care. Like, they literally just want a book that their kid will read because he doesn't like books, or a book that identifies with the main character's a minority like them, or that their kid doesn't get to read about somebody that's like them, or there's several different areas where people are just searching for things. There's books about bullying or books about whatever. And people that do well indie, because people are just typing in stuff on Amazon. They're looking through customers also bought, and they truly do not know who you are and truly do not care who you are as an indie author. Which is fine. So yes, that is a good point, that it's very small because nobody cares.
I love it. You might be one of the most realist authors I've ever talked to. Very direct. Let's talk a little bit about school visits, because I'm very curious about how you mentioned that you've had better luck organizing school visits now that you've got a traditional publisher behind you versus back when you were indie, which strikes me as absurd because you're the same guy. So what tips do you have for setting up school visits and for getting as many as you can? And then beyond that, what do you have for tips for having a successful school visit?
Sure. So I should preface this by saying that I'm not an expert in this area, that I haven't done a ton of school visits. But like we talked about at the beginning, I have done work, spoken to kids for about 10 years. And I do feel like I'm pretty good at that. I feel like I'm really good at that. That's one of the things that I really enjoy, that I feel like I'm one of the best at, that I really enjoy. So I got my start I got invited to a conference a couple years in a row in Texas. And I was a bookseller who sells to schools, and he knew about my books. And he probably thought, oh, this kid's available. And so he got me to come down there, and I started doing school visits like that. So that just got me my foot in the door in as far as being able to do it, to talk to kids, and then to get some video and pictures of that and things like that. So that helps, just being able to do a couple, to feel it out and things like that. And then honestly, just this past year, I went through, I made a spreadsheet of every district in my county and in the 3 counties around me, and went to their website and found out if they have like a librarian that covers the whole district, or librarians for each school, and then emailed a lot of them. And most of them didn't, just kind of, hey, introducing myself. I'm local, I'm available for school visits. I'd love to send you a copy to look at for your library. Just want to help in any way I can, basically. And so sent out, and just like any cold call, don't get a lot of response from a lot of people, but you do get a response from some people. And is able to set up some school visits that way. And then from those school visits, I just completed one a couple weeks ago, and at the end it went over really well. The kids really enjoyed it, and at the end, just asking for a referral. Basically, most people don't want to ask for things, but just go up to the librarian, like, hey, I don't know a lot of librarians in the area. Would love, if it was a hit with your kids, that spread my name around a little bit. That would be helpful. And honestly, librarians are librarians because they like helping people. And if you're good, librarians can be your best friend, right? And so she was really kind and went on some listservs for librarians in the state of Ohio, and wrote up a really nice review of it. And I've gotten, just in the last couple of weeks, several things through that. Set up things through that. So so I think, again, promising something and over delivering on that promise. If you can go on and put on a really great school visit, people are willing to help you out and ask for it. So, I've definitely done, several now in my fair share, and I'm setting up more and more for next year. Which is exciting. And so for the school visit, one of the things that I do, and again, you got to figure out what works for you. If you're an author, illustrator, great. Illustration is something that you're good. Now, I for the kids' church, one of the things that I've done over the years is learn some magic, because it gets kids' attention and it gets them to watch you a little bit. So I've used that. I start out. I used to just kind of do it. Now I ask first if I can do it. But I do it. My best trick is I have this piece of paper, crumble it up, light it on fire, throw it to a kid. And then by the time it reaches that kid's hands, it's $1 bill. It's a huge hit. And that is a great way to start a school visit, I found. And so just finding something like that. And then I tie in my talk to magic and things like that, and doing things, basically, if you can do something like playing the piano, to me is magic if somebody can play the piano. But, you can do it by practicing every day. And the same thing for me, being an author, seemed like magic. Like writing a long book like that seemed like a thing that was really hard and was a magical thing. But by being able to discipline myself and do it every day, I'm able to do that. So tying it into that magic thing was helpful to me. Having pictures in the back, answering kids' questions. And honestly, if you are at all engaging, like these kids don't know any authors. And so if an author gets up there, they just assume that they're a celebrity. So like it's your, you already start out, really far ahead of the pack. So you just kind of have to not screw up as in an author visit, and it'll go really well, I think.
I love it. Yeah, no, if you weren't amazing, how would they have put your name on a book? Obviously.
Well, there you go.
I'm also enjoying the thought of the conversation of the teacher's internal monologue. He's going to throw a ball of fire at my student, but I'm
Well,
sure
yeah,
it'll be
I don't.
fine.
Yeah, I still don't tell him that I'm going to throw it at the kid. I just tell him like, okay, it's flash paper. It's magician's flash paper. It's very safe. There's going to be a little bit of fire, but it's going to be okay. But just check it with your principal.
And um, how long is a great school visit while keeping the kids engaged, but feeling like they got their their time and in some cases their money's worth? And how do you know if you've been successful at a school visit?
Well, I mean, if you've talked to kids enough, you just know it when they're in tune and when they're engaged, and if they're not and they're elementary school kids, they'll let you know. And so you'll probably know if it's not going well. But generally I think 45 minutes to an hour is really good. If you go and in that, I try to do different things every, 15, 20 minutes or so. And so there's a section where I'm doing that magic section. There's a section where I'm talking about my book specifically. Sometimes I'll read the books and then take questions and answer. I've been asked to do, an hour and a half before. And so in that case, brought an exercise, a writing exercise that has to do with video games, to kind of get them to something else. So kids have, an attention span that's shorter than 45 minutes. So you got to keep things moving and move on to different things. But if you can keep moving on to different things and keep it engaging, you can keep it going pretty long, but you just got to keep that in mind.
Makes sense to me. Fantastic. And I'm assuming that with the school visits, that's while there may or may not be an honorarium involved. I know that can be a little bit up and down depending on the school, depending on how much distance you're traveling to get to the school. But I'm assuming that that's not between your Amazon selling and the books themselves. I'm assuming that the primary motivation to do those school visits is not necessarily the money from the visit itself. Is it just creating those lifelong raving fans, to get all corporate on you, by chatting with the kids and creating that unique experience? I remember Dustin Brady. He threw flash fire paper at me.
You know what? Honestly, I just love it. I really like doing it. So that's, again, a selfish reason why. But again, the reason, we've talked a lot about selling books and making sales. But honestly, the reason that I write and the reason that I continue to write and that I like writing, is that, especially for reluctant readers, is I get a lot of notes from parents and teachers that, my kid never liked a book before. They would never touch a book before, but he read your book. He loves it. And he's asking for more books from different authors. And this is the book that got him into reading. And just being able to do that on a per book basis is great. And then being able to see that kind of connect with kids in a presentation is really cool to experience. Where I've asked, I'll start out my presentation, how many kids like video games? Every hand goes up. How many kids like reading? And no hands go up. And by the end, they're very into it, and they get feedback later from teachers who said, these kids are going back and reading your books, and they're very excited about it. And so it's kind of that mission part of it too. In addition to, I just really like it, and it's a really, it's a fun rush to be able to stand up there and talk to them for an hour. In addition to that, it is really cool to be able to see kids connect with books in a way that they wouldn't if they hadn't met an author.
We have talked a lot about money and sales because this is a show primarily for other writers and for publishing professionals and people that are really into the nerdy stuff. But I always joke I've got a background in finance and financial consulting. And I never started a conversation about how to plan for your retirement or how to make the most out of your money with first thing you do is write a book. That was never how that conversation opens up.
No.
So obviously there's something far more satisfying. You're an Amazon seller. You could sell, portable CD players and anything else that was going to have a profit margin. This is obviously a passion project and something that you love. So what what are you planning to do next? Are there other projects that you're still yearning to work on? Stories you want to tell? Are you looking at anything beyond middle grade? Or are you going to stay very middle grade focused?
Yeah, I'm going to continue middle grade focus because, like I said before, that's what I know the best. That's what I feel most comfortable with, and I really don't have a desire to write long books personally. So I do want to. I'm starting to work on a series that's going to be geared towards traditional publishing, and it's a different experience. But I do want to work on that and get that off the ground. And then in the meantime, traditional market generally, they don't want more than one book a year from an author, and my books are short and I can write more than one book a year, so why not? So I do plan to continue writing indie books. And because it is, it is more fun not to have to worry about those extra things and just worry about this is an adventure for you, young reluctant reader, and you're going to really like it. And it was really fun to write, and you're going to have a lot of fun reading it. So I do still enjoy writing those, and I do plan on continuing writing those and keeping a mix of both things right now.
Do you keep to a regular writing schedule? Do you have a daily word count goal? How do you decide what's a successful writing week or writing month?
Yeah, I do. So like I really like having written something, but I don't generally, like 80% of the mornings, I don't enjoy the act of writing it. It's just, I don't know. It just feels like pushing a boulder up a hill, and it's tough for me a lot of days to do it. So I have to make myself do it. I have an app that turns off the internet and on the computer, on the phone, and it is ironclad, and I can't get back on for 2 hours. And so my goal is to have that on for 2 hours every morning. And and sometimes it depends on what stage of writing I am, but it might be to write, I might try to write 1,000 words during that time, or if I'm writing real fast, 2,000 words. But it's just having those 2 hours every morning to do that. And so, I'll do things to make myself do that. If I don't turn that app on or schedule it as soon as I wake up, sometimes you start doing stuff, getting stuff, I'm working on Amazon. So it feels like I'm working, but I'm really just kind of putting off writing. And so I have a calendar where I right next to my desk where I mark down, I color in each day. And if I got to 2 hours, it's a full page, the full block is colored, and I write 2 hours. And so that keeps me on track and motivated and things like that. And some days I do, some days I don't. And then, once a week I'll go to the library and write, put in an extra 4 or 5 hours at the library every day. But, for me, that seems to work for me to get me to write like that. So, and then if I'm editing, that's a little bit easier to kind of get into, especially if it's a later stage of editing. So that one I don't mind working on in the afternoon and things like that. But generally, if I don't write in the morning, it's not going to happen.
That makes sense. And then are you an ardent plotter, or are you write it by the seat of your pants, or somewhere in between?
Somewhere in between, but more pantsing. But at the beginning of the book, I'll in my mind I kind of have the book in 3 acts generally, and it's not following anything in particular. But before I start writing the book, I'll generally have an idea what the end is, and then maybe at the end of Act 1 and at the end of Act 2, and almost always all 3 of those things change along the way, but I'll start working on it and start working towards something. And then basically going by the seat of my pants as I'm writing it. And then in the second draft, connecting everything and making it, the beginning now has to connect to the new end and things like that.
Makes sense. That makes me almost nervous because you're talking 1,000 to 2,000 words when you're really on it, and I'm thinking, my God, if you're only doing 20 to 25 chapters, that's that's a significant portion of the book. So let me ask the required follow-up. How many drafts are you typically going through? How much time are you spending in revision then?
Yeah, so I'm going to. So it depends on the first go through. If I'm really concentrating on it and really working at it, I might. I'm working on making that first draft good. So that first draft, it'll alternate between sections that are well written and sections that are just kind of scribbled in. And so if I'm working on a well-written section, I might end up writing in those 2 hours 500 words, 700 words. If I'm just scribbling it in, it might be 2,500 words or something like that. So that directly relates to how long it's going to take me in my second draft, how much of that was scribbled in. And so that second draft is really where I go through and make everything good. And so, it's taking those chapters that I worked on really hard in the first draft and maybe making changes here and there, adding things to kind of connect the dots to later in the book and things like that. For chapters that I scribbled in, it's kind of going back and doing the hard work of actually like scrapping everything and writing again. And so that's generally the second draft is by the end of the second draft, the whole book is consistently the same quality, which is good. The third draft is then making it really good. So going through and editing and taking out things that don't belong, simplifying things. A lot of times when I'm writing, I don't use complicated language, but I'll make plot points way too complicated. So I'll take things out and kind of streamline things a little bit, and add some foreshadowing, add some different things, and just really taking a critical look at that third chapter to go from good to really close to great. And then the fourth pass, going through and taking and then doing a lot of proofreading and fixing some problems there. So it's four main drafts, I would say, and then fifth, sixth, seventh is really fine tuning things sometimes. But those four main drafts are the four ways I think about it, and they can take a long time, they can take a short time, but sometimes there's multiple steps within each of those drafts. But that's generally kind of how I work.
And are you ardently that if I'm drafting, don't go back and do any rewriting, or do you do that along the way the first time?
No, I do. I use Scrivener, so I go back and on the little note card for each chapter, I'll write, okay, now we're going to do this in the back. So I remember it, but I don't go back and rewrite it until that second draft.
Makes sense. And Dustin, I could talk your face off all night. And I know I've already done it because I've got so many deeply, deeply nerdy questions for you.
Oh, man.
But I'm not going to do that. I don't want to overuse your time.
Sure.
So let me ask you this one last catch-all question I'd love to ask. And that is, if there was anything you could go back and tell past you, if there's somebody out there who's watching or listening, and there most assuredly is, who says, how can I one day be Dustin Brady? What's the one bit of advice you wish you'd had and that you'd want them to have about writing and about publishing?
Yeah, I would say just do it. For me, I was, there's no reason I couldn't have written my first book 5 years earlier than I did. I just, I always kind of wanted to do it. I just, and it didn't take that long to write it. It was a fairly short book. But I just, didn't. It was just this bear in my head where, I felt like, I have to do more research. I have to learn more. I have to get better. And the only way you're going to get better is by sitting down and writing it. And so I guess my advice to myself when I was younger would be just to sit down and do it. And same thing for people. I think people spend a lot of time, well, I'm going to take this course and I'm going to, I got to ask these questions that in the end don't really matter. And just sit down and write it and put it out there and learn and then do it again.
Makes sense to me, with the exception that if you're in Indiana near the Indiana Writer Center and you're thinking about taking one of my courses, absolutely take that course. That course. Is vital.
No. Yeah.
But otherwise, just do it. I love it.
Yeah, everybody has to take that course. But once you've taken it.
So, Dustin, where can an esteemed audience find you online? Where can they stalk you?
Yeah, so just go to my website. I don't have an author Facebook page, or don't do much on social media. So go to my website. It has my books. You can email me there, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have or just chat with you a little bit there. So my website is dustinbradybooks.com, or just search Dustin Brady in Google, and you'll find some way to contact me, I'm sure. And
esteemed audience, if you don't know it by now, of course, I'm at middlegradeninja.com. head there. Make sure you come back next week. We're going to be talking with Molly O'Neill, literary agent Molly O'Neill, on Tuesday. On Friday, we'll be talking with author Amber Smith. Both going to be wonderful conversations. So make sure you find your way back for that. Don't forget to download your free ebook of Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees. Next time you're at your library, say, "Hey, Miss Librarian, please include this book with your children's section," and ask them if the adult books too. Why not? You're already there. You're already making the ask. Go nuts. Dustin, I've been asking our guests to sign us off with our sign-off phrase, the very ninja-like phrase, "Hi-ya," and what have you. Will you sign us off?
Sure. Hiya, and what have you.